Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet. I'm Mark Cashman, here with my co-host, Chris McNulty.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, Chris, what?
So, this week, we're doing a special on all the events throughout the year.
All of them.
So, I've got an idea. We have a couple of prizes sitting around that we really should use to help reward our listeners for paying attention to our events.
Yeah, but if we're going to give prizes away in the Intrazone, they have to be pretty big prizes.
Well, I have a drone still sitting around that I absolutely would love to share with a listener.
And, well, do you think we can give away something else, like maybe one thing for one of the events and one for the other, like maybe a bigger prize, like an actual free pass to the SharePoint Conference?
That would be huge. Let's figure out where to use them. So we've got a whole episode. We'll be on the lookout for the right place to slip those in. On today's episode, we'll be talking about the breadth and heartbeat of the Microsoft community. Are you ready?
I am.
To follow me and you
Yes?
across the event horizon.
Ooh, I love it. Sounds very sci-fi and techie.
Joining us today are Jeff Medford and Bill Baer to unwrap and bring to light behind-the-scenes work, purposes, and goals of our Microsoft first-party events.
Jeff Medford is Director of Microsoft 365 Marketing, and Bill Baer is our SharePoint Senior Product Marketing Manager. And these are two people who have been integral in Microsoft events for quite some time.
So let's take a look at events here on this week's episode of The Intrazone.
The Intrazone, the events episode.
You know, I've been an organizer of events. I've organized SharePoint Saturdays. I've helped organize Microsoft presences at our own conferences, as well as in my prior life doing it for Dell and Quest. I think it's important when the attendees are considering which events to go to. You can't go to all of them. I mean, we love it, but you can't go to all of them. And I think people need to understand kind of what is the purpose of the event in the first place. And not just to deliver great training and let sponsors and vendors have a dialogue and participate in that. But you need to be able to discern, why does this event happen here and when and why?
Yeah, and this episode, we hope to break down the importance of the SharePoint Conference, the importance of Ignite. Obviously, we have a lot invested there, so we want to showcase a lot of what we're doing so people are aware of what's the value of going to those. We'll spend a lot of time, obviously, talking about third-party events across the year. But where we thought we would start was, what is the philosophy behind events? You can think of, what is the philosophy of what content will be presented at an event? Who will be speaking? Who are we wanting to speak to as far as the attendees and being able to level at the right level, attract and connect with the right audience, and then, of course, build an event that's nice to go to. You don't just want to feel like you're just reading the internet by going to an event, but to have community aspects, people connections, a lot of the things that make it, what's worth my time going to this event, wherever it is.
Now, so you mentioned the keynote. One thing I think people understand is we put a lot of care and feeding into the preparation of our keynotes. There's a fairly high editorial bar that we go through, that we want to make sure that we're communicating things which are fun and exciting for the audience, but also that there is something new, that there's something people haven't seen before. If no one laughs or claps or is amused by anything in a keynote, I think we've missed something.
I also think that if you take it across events, so year after year, if you were to, say, in Netflix style, binge all of the Microsoft keynotes, the SharePoint keynotes, I know nobody's ever going to do this, but I believe we're also mindful of, what did we say last season? So as somebody were to go from SPC 18 to SPC 19, there's going to be a build on the foundation approach with, of course, the want to show new and show innovation, but at the same time not recreate the wheel and look, SharePoint is now this, SharePoint is now that. And to consistently land, where does it fit into the broader scope beyond SharePoint itself? Office 365, Microsoft 365, and then beyond the Microsoft speak is, what does it actually mean to the end users? I think consistently we've gotten the feedback at events, through our marketing, through our materials for clarity. And beyond the keynote, but certainly the keynote starts it all, I think one of the big jobs at an event is to just provide that clarity. When somebody leaves, they'll know what's coming, they'll know what's available to them now, they'll know how to use it, and they'll know how to put it into context with what are they doing right now, because everybody is at a different part of that journey.
Yep. I think just to kind of round out the keynote, there's pressure on us to make sure that, especially for paid events, if someone has come before, asking them to pay again to get exactly the same keynote they had a year ago is really, I think, something we just don't want to do. At the same time, not everyone remembers and reads every announcement, every speech, every blog post we make. So there's someone in the audience who may not have been present for last year, and we have to make sure there's at least an avenue for getting them to that. And I think the second place where that comes down is once we take it down a notch, when we look at the keystone sessions, the general sessions at conferences, or the breakouts and the workshops, it's an opportunity for us to start addressing different aspects of our audience from a technical complexity level, 100, 200, 400, and so forth. And then we still are mindful of, is this more of a business value session, a business user session, an IT pro session, a developer session, or a mix?
Chris, when you hear the word core note, what does that mean?
Well, at one level, I'm trying to confuse people by saying something that isn't a keynote. But part of that ongoing dialogue and that conversation that we have, as an attendee, you should always look for sessions where there's lots of opportunities to ask questions. So sometimes it is Ask the Expert or an AMA session. Sometimes you'll see an MVP panel. One thing that we've been doing more of that I like to do in particular is not to come in at the beginning of a conference with lots of grand thoughts and visions and roadmap, but sometimes the best value we have is to come in at the end and just be there to help put things in context, because people will have left to right heard from Microsoft, from our MVPs, and from people who may not have much connection with us at all. To try to integrate all that into a whole, it's an opportunity for people to ask speakers, Microsoft experts questions. And that's, I think, a great thing to look for in any conference. And we try to make sure that we have some opportunity for that dialogue formally.
Yeah, so it will have been a busy week. You heard a lot of stuff. Is there something that wasn't clear or something that doesn't feel like it ladders up in the right way? Come to that last, like you said, ask Microsoft or ask me anything, whomever's running it.
Right.
Cool. So I think it's time for us to virtually and audibly register all Interzone listeners to come on our journey with us now, to take your badge and register first for Ignite, second for SPC, third for all other events. Do you have your badge ready?
I have my badge right here.
All right, let's go to registration booth and hit it. Chris, I think it's time to get into the real heart of the show. It's time to talk about Ignite. And we are super, super excited and very fortunate to have Jeff Medford here. Jeff, you are in the house. You are Director of Microsoft 365 Marketing.
Yeah. My role is specifically around the IT Pro audience. So IT Pro encompasses decision makers and implementers and all the people who do tech stuff. So across my kind of team, we have events, community, content, technical readiness. And so Ignite is really the place where we bring that all together. I work with an amazing team of developer audience folks that we always try to partner so that we have a kind of one Microsoft story from that.
Back in November of 2008.
Yeah.
Where it started for you,
ago.
Right?
Yeah.
What was your role, and then maybe a couple stepping stones just to get there so people know Jeff's actually a good guy to have as Director of Marketing for the IT audience?
Yeah, technical. Always was professional services throughout my whole career, kind of into the solution architect world, and then came as a TSP, the technical sales professional at Microsoft, for live meeting, incubation products. One of them was BPAS. So BPAS landed on our team in its very infancy. And I worked as a TSP to help, really customers, partners, everybody go understand what it was. And then moved into the subsidiary role of a product manager. But back then it was TPM. So we had technical product managers, and just kind of stayed on that path into the worldwide team, and always have just considered myself and my team as kind of technical aspects of marketing and product truth and hopefully subject matter experts. And we just try to bring that to our events and community.
So you said BPOS, which means to me you've been around for a while.
Yes.
Stands for Business Productivity Online Suite, which also is now
Office 365.
Office
365, all the 365.
Was that a question back to me?
Yeah.
Obviously, as it's been in its infancy all the way up to where we are now, you've been around for a while. And I think, if I remember correctly, you also had a nice focus of SharePoint in your TSP role.
Absolutely. I've always seen SharePoint as a huge value driver for any of what our customers are doing. And early in the TSP role was trying to help our TSPs demonstrate SharePoint in ways that were scalable, which then brought me into the role of demos and demo provisioning and really insane things we do against the service that allows scale of templates and stuff for our sellers to do. And that, at a really just tactical level, evolved into things we call customer immersion experience, the demos we do on demos.microsoft.com, the back end. And so my team also owns those pieces of just truly trying to give people experiences on the service that can be automated and they can actually see what's going on. And SharePoint's always a huge part of that.
Okay, so if what we now know as Ignite is also something called Ignite the Tour, that's what we're really here to pick your brain about.
Yep.
We want to start with really what's the overall Ignite strategy, besides that we offer the Ignite the Tour for free, which is a great strategy.
Yep.
Ignite, the big conference, obviously is a paid offering. Where do we think about what is the Microsoft goal? What's the audience goal? What's the strategy?
Yeah, I think it starts with something very simple, which is we want to make sure our customers, partners, anybody has up-to-date technical content and learning and readiness. Years ago, that could have been 10 different places you had to go. It could have been specific to products. And so from an Ignite perspective, we said we want a moment in time where all audiences can come in, communities can come together, hear from experts who live and breathe this on the Microsoft side every day, hear from experts like MVPs and people out in the field who are doing like real solutions, and bring all these people together in a place and try to make it special for them. And then the tour was a very, I'll just say, tactical thing of how do we keep that content fresh and up to date all the time? And the starting of like Ignite from way back in the day to then we did Office 365 summits to then we moved into cloud road shows. The intention for all of the tour stops was always broaden our reach to people who can't make it to a single location, go around the world, and then put engineers and PMMs and people who create content on stage because it forces them to update the content. And so then we always have something that's up to date in a services world. And in my back of my mind, take all the marketing aside, it's about getting very smart people on stage and keeping that content up to date so that everyone in the world can just always have that.
So let's explore a little bit something that I think is obvious to most of us here in Redmond, but maybe not outside of campus, is the overall Microsoft event strategy. When you look at the year, we have Ignite, we have Build, we have Envision, kind of as major keystone events throughout the year, as well as Inspire.
Yep.
How do you see kind of that overall event strategy at a top level translating into our forward-looking, field-facing Ignite tours?
The strategy of these moments and bringing communities together and having them throughout the year with different audiences is to make sure that we can all try to make people happy when they come. So Envision from a decision maker, from an Ignite to IT and architects to build and devs. It goes from saying we need spots to do this and we need places to land to then from a strategy of it's not just an event, it's a moment in time for our engineering team to work towards, to release towards, and to kind of put together their storyline. And I would say that's a big part of the strategy of events is to make sure that our engineering teams have these moments to come and say, here's what we were building, here's the feedback we need, here's the latest and greatest. And I feel like the strategy comes together with engineering and marketing at one of these events and allows us to tell the story in a clear way instead of maybe point and shoot out everywhere else.
We go through conferences as presenters.
Yep.
For someone who's listening to the podcast who says, as they may, well, I can't afford or it's geographically inconvenient for me to get to Florida for the big Ignite event. What's the experience like for an attendee who walks into an Ignite Tour City event?
It should be the same but local, and it should feel community driven. It should feel like there's experts around. It should feel like there's people who you know and are part of in your community, whether it's System Center, Config whether it's SharePoint. There's expo places to have conversations. There's technical resources. So it should feel like Ignite in a way that you're engaging with subject matter experts from Redmond and from local and from MVPs. And it should feel like Ignite of 2 days. I'm sitting down and I'm really going to get some content and I'm going to be able to do labs. And so, we truly want it to be Ignite feel, Ignite. And that's why it got the Ignite brand, to be quite honest. These used to be called tech summits and other things. And we felt like we earned the brand and we're able to then give that kind of experience just over our iteration for the last few years. And it helps people have that experience. So
I would say,
long story short, it should feel the same.
And it's, I think, the right strategy. I know from a content owner / presenter and whatnot over the years, to see that content that's created for Ignite, the big moment, is then leveraged for the more regional events and obviously is kept up to date throughout the year, priceless for us. And that a lot of that content is then available to our partners and our field members and updates a lot of other resources for people to be able to have a one-on-one, one-to-few in their own very district-oriented conversations. And to know that that's content from Ignite kind of carries a weight to it. Like, oh yeah, that's the right content. It's the right level. And with the tours, it's actually up to date, which is, again, precious.
It's one of the things I love seeing after Ignite are the SharePoint Saturdays or SharePoint things happening on Twitter and social that says, hey, here my Ignite recap. And it's coming from an MVP or even one of us that is going out and saying, here's what we learned at Ignite. And seeing that happen in the months after Ignite always makes me happy because that's Ignite content just being reused and told in the ways that we hope that it should be told. And then we just try to follow that up with the Ignite tour as we go into January, February, March, and keeping that super fresh.
We talk about some of the other things, SharePoint Saturdays and the evolution of SPC. Just looking at Ignite the tour, how it really is, can we say, little sibling to the big Ignite? But it really, I think, has earned that credibility. And, thanks a lot and credit to your team for driving it that way.
And I think it's really comes down to the community, like you were saying. It's the people who identify with products and people and speakers and then want to have those connections. And I'll be very honest, I think it took us a little while with Ignite over the last 3 or 4 years to kind of have a big place where you can see and be part of smaller things and try to be flexible enough that communities can be within Ignite and not get lost. And I think that true at the heart of Big Ignite helps flow it into the regions as people want to be part of a community.
I'll also reflect, for us in the product team, every audience is different. And I've been privileged to speak at Ignite Tour and some of the other things in North America and Asia and Europe and Africa. Over the past year, the caliber of attendees and engagement that we get back at these events is tremendous. Like it is, as a speaker and as a representative of Microsoft, it's gratifying to do a session and have so much Q&A afterwards that they're like, folks, can you move this to the hall? Because we actually do have another session coming in. And really thoughtful questions, not are you ever going to do X? But here's my problem. How can we work together to solve it?
And I think the continuing onus on us as speakers and subject matter experts is to continue to push deeper. And until the customer says stop, that's what we would love the tour to be, is we want to go as deep as we can per where we are and who we're talking to. And that's really true.
Sign us up for a 500 level SharePoint course. We're on it.
We'll do it. I'm not even kidding.
So I'm wondering if you can talk to the prospective attendee out there who says, I went to Ignite last fall, and I know Ignite Tour is coming soon to a city near me, but it's a repeat of everything I've heard, and why should I even bother going for 2 days? And I'll give you a hint, it rhymes with Lamsterdam.
Yeah. So the answer, I think both of those are to connect with the people who are in your industry and what you're doing and are experts, and a connection with your community. Doesn't matter if it was 6 months ago or a year ago, you should be connecting with people. And I think that's a lot what we see with the Ignite Tour is people reconnecting after that big exhausting moment in the fall, should come out and connect with their community at the Ignite Tour. And then I'll also say that as much as we say content kind of flows, a lot happens in 6 months. And a lot happens with the products, a lot happens with our direction of pieces. And so maybe staggering and coming through at a local tour will give you a little bit of more inside knowledge or a little bit of updated knowledge that it's simply in 6 months' time, a lot of things can change for the better and can change from a direction standpoint. So I'd say it comes down to that core Ignite experience of connecting with experts, whether they're your friends or people from far away, and then stuff will be updated and you will see new pieces.
I'm mindful of the fact that our mission statement is not to help every person and organization in the U.S. achieve more. We're a global organization. And to that, like when we look at and places like Amsterdam, where it is a Microsoft presence globally.
Oh, it was Amsterdam. I just got the rhyme. Amsterdam.
But
Catching on.
Increasingly, we're taking advantage of the fact that we have a platform that goes all over the world. And if it's not just an echo chamber, but if we have announcements and news that we want to make, there's an opportunity to actually be the first in the world to hear of something rather than the second when you attend a tour event, which I think is wonderful.
Absolutely. I mean, the diversity of where we're trying to go and engage from Johannesburg, Tel Aviv, Singapore. I mean, these are just the last 3 weeks that we're talking about, even to then our DC event, where I know that we as a content team and as an org have to really focus down on our government and what we're doing for government in specific. So there's always going to be some flavors as we go out around the world, or even do a little bit different audience from a U.S. perspective.
Yeah, so let's talk about a couple of cities that are coming up, hopefully to inform our audience with the next few that are coming.
Yep.
But then I've got a question that sort of hopefully will land the more of what to expect when you go to one of these.
Yep.
So we got Washington, D.C. That's actually at the time we release this episode. It's happening now, February 4th through the 5th. Sydney, Australia, February 13th to 14th. I think I saw a lot of people signing up for that one.
Yep.
And London, England, February 26th to 27th.
Ding, ding.
Yeah.
All right, which one?
I'll be at London.
All right.
Yeah, I'll be in London.
So across these three, you just mentioned a little bit about government. I assume Washington, D.C. might have a few extra gov-related sessions.
Yes.
What are some of the metrics for when you go to one of these, maybe one of the upcoming three, but really to articulate when you go to a tour event?
Yeah, a tour event, 2 days, jam-packed. We have over 100 sessions, and again, it is Microsoft. So you'll have dynamic sessions, you'll have Azure sessions, data, AI, Microsoft 365, all of the permutations of what we do from our products. So you will have hundreds of sessions. We don't do like the big blowout keynote where you have to go sit in a room. We really tried to pull it back and do a kickoff and say, get people excited about what they can go do over the 2 days. So you'll see theaters. It's just a ton of activity going on. We always try to make it that you can be in a room learning, doing technical workshop, or communicating and networking with people. So it's not like a classes in session type of deal, but you're going to have hundreds of sessions, full complement of our experts and MVPs, and 2 just free full days.
Free.
Yeah. One of the things we deeply thought about was how do we come in with an event, but the fact that it's free and it's about learning, our intention was to really say to, from a very specific U.S. piece right here, it was to say, hey, this is for everyone and anyone can come learn. And we're trying to help people with their careers. And we didn't think that was a conflict of interest during a tough time for a government person.
I would have thought of it the same, and now it just seems doubling down of an offering.
Absolutely.
That certainly lands with a little bit more poignancy today.
Yep.
So kudos to you for having already signed up to do it.
Yeah.
And I think for keeping it on for those exact reasons is great. So the last question, completely off topic. What are Shredford Acres?
Shredford Acres. Oh, my goodness. So always lived in Seattle for a very long time. I lived in the Netherlands also, but I've always been kind of city. My wife and I, with our children, bought a bunch of land out in the deeper forest of Snoqualmie.
I'll do the bird sounds when you do it.
Yeah, it is. And it took us 3 years to build a house. So we built a house and we called it Shredford Acres because I snowboarded for like 30 years and my name is Medford, so everyone call me Shredford.
If your wife's maiden name was Shred something.
We've always been the Shredfords. So yeah, it's our place in the world that we finally have.
So Jeff, thank you for coming in, sharing more about Ignite, the tour, and of course Shredford Acres.
Yeah.
Any last minute words you want to say to our audience members when they're thinking about attending?
Take the time and hopefully it's worth it. We are always love feedback. We look at our scores, but beyond scores, we listen and we really try to make these events for our people and for the community that we know exists across all these products. So I'd say we listen and we're here to make it a great place. So always push us.
And we mentioned your Instagram feed, if you're okay with that. But what are the other ways that people can keep track of what you're doing? And certainly for the tour, we'll have links to the tour and Big Ignite event.
Yeah, I would say the best thing from my team is the tech community. So Microsoft tech community, and we have Twitter handles and blog posts and all the good stuff. But Microsoft tech community is kind of where we live in all of the planning and lead up and how we try to deliver. And then Medford. I got at Medford at Twitter.
So
been all a long
just
time.
Medford.
Yeah, just Medford.
That's nice.
So again, we've been talking with Jeff Medford, Director of Microsoft 365 Marketing, about Ignite and Ignite the Tour. Thank you very much for coming in with us today, Jeff.
Thank you.
Let us turn to another Microsoft event, one that's pretty close to our hearts, the SharePoint Conference.
The
SharePoint Conference, North America, which is coming up here shortly, May 21st to the 23rd. And we are here and being joined by Mr. Bill Baer, who I think is at this moment literally scouting aspects of SPC. Bill, are you there, and where are you?
So I am here today at the MGM Grand, our venue for the 2019 SharePoint Conference, just working to dot the proverbial I's and cross the proverbial T's and prepare our community for an epic event this coming May.
Very nice. So you are SharePointing like a boss, leading the charge, getting it ready for everybody, which I know you've been doing a lot this year, and you certainly did it last year for SPC 18. So we really just want to start with the venue. You're there right now. If you could give us a little audible tour of what maybe it looks like today and knowing how the event is going to be set up for SPC. Tell us a little bit about MGM Grand and that first, what can people expect walking in the door?
Oh, yeah. So the MGM Grand is effectively centrally located on the Las Vegas Strip. So from an entertainment perspective or excursion perspective, you're literally right in the middle of Las Vegas and everything that Las Vegas has to offer. That aside, though, Las Vegas, or the MGM Grand at least, provides a premier conference experience. They've recently renovated their conference facilities. So we have a brand new, fresh, new car smell events center to host this year's SharePoint conference, which is really exciting. We have new opportunities in how we lay out the event itself, the conference rooms where attendees can listen to presentations, and we have a ton of extra space to which we're looking to build great community areas, because the one thing about this event is this is really a celebration of the community.
So, Bill, I think it's interesting. When we've brought SPC back the last couple of years, Microsoft a couple of years ago got out of the product conference business. We used to have Microsoft Exchange Conference and SharePoint Conference and other things, and we've really corralled everything around these first-party tentpole events like Ignite or Build. And we've watched the third-party events kind of take off around them to be able to do things like SharePoint Fest and so forth. And now we've brought back SPC, except it's kind of different from being a pure Microsoft or a pure third-party event, and it isn't just SharePoint. Can you kind of help our audience understand what to think of when they think of SPC now?
On the surface, when you hear SharePoint Conference, your natural reaction is to assume that the conference itself is really dedicated to SharePoint as its core component or the fundamental technology that we're going to talk about, and maybe perceive that as being okay. There may be some content related to some ancillary or technologies or some dependencies that SharePoint takes. But despite the name SharePoint Conference, what this conference is really about is it encompasses everything that is Microsoft 365. So it brings together Office 365, Windows 10, and enterprise mobility. So you can learn about AI-powered tools that unleash creativity and fuel innovation. That's inclusive of the work that we're doing inside of SharePoint, as well as the work that touches on SharePoint. So you can think of things such as Microsoft Search. We're also going to talk a lot about teamwork, so really help inspire people for better ways to kind of bring people together and get more done. And that's inclusive of Microsoft Teams, that's inclusive of SharePoint, that's inclusive of Yammer. That's inclusive of Microsoft Stream, and then integrated. So that's the other thing as well. So we're also going to make technology easier to adopt and manage, and there's a ton of solutions that we're going to be talking about in that kind of integrated and business applications space, from Power Apps and Microsoft Flow, even other concepts that exist inside of Azure services, such as cognitive services. And then we're also going to be talking about our investments in intelligent security, so really to help people people harness the power of intelligent security and teach them how they can protect their company's assets without hindering productivity. So establishing that balance. So we effectively, from a conference perspective, have excellent coverage across all of the fundamentals that encompass Microsoft technologies. So, despite the prominent name of SharePoint in the conference's title itself, this is effectively a Microsoft conference. And it's your unique opportunity to kind of get hands-on with these technologies and meet one-on-one with over 100 experts from Microsoft product and program management teams, as well as our engineering teams as well.
Can you talk about sort of from day one, Jeff Teeper keynote, then throughout the week, that audience experience? You mentioned some metrics about lots of speakers, lots of sessions, but kind of lay the foundation of what's the audience, from day one through to day end.
Yeah, so the conference itself actually kicks off on a Sunday with pre-conference workshops. So on both Sunday and Monday, we're offering full-day pre-conference workshops. So if you really want to get an opportunity to get hands-on with experts and learn the technology and participate in hands-on labs and demonstrations, Sunday and Monday are definitely opportunities to look at if you plan on attending the event early. On Tuesday, we're going to kick off the event with a keynote from Jeff Teeper and our leadership team, and we're going to be talking a lot about the things that I just mentioned, not just SharePoint, but really looking across Microsoft 365, looking across business application scenarios, teamwork scenarios, intelligent security scenarios, investments in artificial intelligence and mixed reality. So we're going to cover a ton of things as related to the way that we see technology empowering businesses today as part of that keynote.
What are we trying to communicate at the keynote?
Well, we're going to talk about a lot of things at the keynote. Some of the things are inclusive of vision and strategy, which also speaks to a certain extent about our roadmap as we move forward. But we also want to celebrate the things that we had talked about at Microsoft Ignite. So this kind of becomes a big ship moment as well for some of the capabilities that we had disclosed at Microsoft Ignite. So really paying it off through the SharePoint conference. And then really the other thing that the keynote itself provides is an opportunity for you to look at different ways that you can drive adoption and usage inside of your organization with the features we've delivered since we've announced them or disclosed them at Microsoft Ignite, all the way up to looking towards that roadmap and understanding how you can better leverage Microsoft technologies in the future, because there is that transparency through the keynote to help you prepare for what's coming next.
Yeah, and I think the themes, that we're landing on, the themes really haven't changed. We still focus on how people can share and work together. So new innovation for OneDrive and SharePoint, how we work with the Microsoft Teams integration to bring a better together story. I know there's the employee engagement, so expect to see what are we doing for your modern intranet to make it easier to create, to migrate to build and carry forward. Chris, I know in your space, there's content services and what we're doing with business processes, so Power Apps and Flow. I know those teams are gearing up to share a lot of new stuff.
And news about news.
News about news. It doesn't stop there. And right. I think, Bill, you as a new owner in the Microsoft search space, if I'm allowed to say that, taking on a lot of the innovation with the graph and what we're doing there. And then finally, always a lot for developers, a lot for IT, and of course, a lot for the end user. I think from what I've had visibility on, you're going to get a lot of innovation across all of those spaces. Obviously, a lot of those demos are going to make it into the keynote, but I'll expect a lot of those first visibilities in some of the overview sessions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you kind of hit it spot on. So, we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to show you a lot of things that you've never seen before, from concepts such as search. So all of these different endpoints that comprise this thing that we call Microsoft Search, to news about news, huge news about things like portals and intranets, and huge news around what we're doing from a content services perspective. And a lot of that also is going to come through those general sessions I started talking about. So following that keynote to where you really get a fundamental understanding of vision and strategy and the future look at technology, then you can dive right into these general sessions led by members of our product team as well as our leadership team. And I know you and Chris will be heavily involved in delivering those sessions. And that's really the opportunity to double click from the keynote down into those select areas of investment that we're making. So if you have an interest in content services, and that's really what your business is trying to understand so they can achieve more with it, you're going to find general sessions led by Chris and his peers that will provide that double click into some of the disclosures that'll be made through our keynote. And then after those Monday general sessions, we're going to follow those up with a great set of community and customer sessions. So you can effectively look at that as maybe the triple click to the keynote itself. And then as we move into Wednesday and beyond, we're going to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And by the time we reach Thursday afternoon, leading into kind of the Friday post-conference workshops, you're going to find so much 400 level content for those people who really want to immerse themselves in the technology, and they want to know what the gears and the knobs are behind the things that we introduced earlier in the week. So the way that we've arranged it is we've got a great flow to help you from the beginning all the way to the end of all the things that we're going to talk about at the conference.
Can you kind of tease out for us what makes SPC uniquely SPC with community events, the kinds of things with podcasts, the expo floor? Like, what else can people expect throughout the week?
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point, Chris, is that SPC, when we brought this event back last year, the event itself shouldn't be seen as your traditional conference. We really want to make this conference about the community. Community is important to us in SharePoint, and it always has been. That's why we've always done a SharePoint conference. But this conference is effectively all about community. And a lot of the things that we're going to offer community is obviously last year we had a fantastic attendee celebration with the B-52s. We're not going to let that be the last of the fantastic attendee celebrations that we have planned. So we've got some exciting announcements that we'll make as we get closer to the event as related to that. Obviously, we had a number of different activities for different members of the community last year, from the opportunity to participate with the product team at events at Topgolf and other venues throughout the MGM. So your traditional SharePoint events that we've offered over the course of the years. Throughout the expo hall and throughout the conference center itself, we're going to have community zones. So for example, if you're a musician that also happens to do SharePoint, we're going to have musical instruments lined up for you in different zones, to where if you just want to sit down and relax and take yourself away from the conference for a minute, you can sit down, grab an instrument, and leverage that and have some fun with that. We also have community meetups that we're scheduling. So we're also working on community meetups. So if you're a parent in technology, a woman in technology, or you just want to meet and hang out with like-minded people, we're going to have tons of opportunities through our community meetups for you to do that. We have an excellent diversity and inclusion track that we are actively pulling together, and we're going to have some great pre-conference and post-conference cocktail receptions for our diversity and inclusion event. So really, this conference itself is, while it's an opportunity for you to learn about the technology to help transform your business, it's also an opportunity for you to come together and connect and collaborate with your peers, and in some cases just step away from the technology for a minute and spend time with the people that are doing the same things that you're doing. SPC isn't for the diehard SharePoint veteran. One of the things that we're actually pulling together and we're building our content towards is this idea of a learning path. So you can walk into the SharePoint conference never having heard of SharePoint, and you can walk away from the conference with a fundamental understanding of what SharePoint is and how you can best use it. So this idea of learning paths that we're working on, that we'll soon start to publish, hopefully leading into the month of February, is a collection of curated sessions that we believe will help you go from 0 to 60 with SharePoint. And that's kind of one of the unique things that we're doing with the SharePoint conference this year. So we really want to make it accessible to everybody, regardless of their skill set as it relates to Microsoft technologies.
I think that's wonderful. I do want to put a plug for anybody that is thinking about joining us in Vegas for SPC 19. You need to know one thing about SharePoint before you show up, or learn it on day one, and I swear your life will be much easier. Ready for it? Capital S, capital P, one word, no space, and then learn on from there. SharePoint.
The other thing to expect, though, is SharePoint used to be blue, and now it's
teal.
Thank you.
SharePoint teal. And I think that leads into something I just wanted to maybe see if we can get a little bit out of Bill. I know there's going to be a lot of swag from both Microsoft and all of our partners. It's always a fun part of the expo to go around and see what fidget spinners, socks, big things that AvePoint gives away, like motorcycles or whatever they're going to do. Any little swag teases you can give us, Bill?
So we've got a ton of swag that we're going to be bringing down to the SharePoint conference, and we brought a lot of it to Ignite. So for those of you who weren't able to attend at Microsoft Ignite, we're going to do some of the same great, cool things.
Do we have any leftover monkeys?
We do have leftover monkeys, and then we still have some leftover 360-degree video drones that we had at Microsoft Ignite. So if you're not familiar with SharePoint swag, we always try to kind of one-up ourselves. So we have had socks, we have had belts, we have had stickers, we have had drones, we have had fidget spinners, Rubik's Cubes, mouse pads. So bring a large suitcase kind of is the recommendation if you're definitely wanting to bring home some SharePoint swag. And with over 100 partners in our exhibition hall, you're definitely going to find some cool and unique items to make the journey to Las Vegas memorable when you arrive back home.
We've spoken a bit about, what the context is and the history and, what some of the surround things are. But technical exposure and learning is a key mission for us at this conference. And when we think about the bread and butter of this event, which are the sessions and how people can pivot from hearing folks at Microsoft tell them this is the way, the truth, and the light to accomplish your goals with M365, being able to bring partners and MVPs in to speak, I think, puts a great context around that because they can bring light from a different direction and be more thoughtful and nuanced and illuminative about the approach to our solutions. When you think about the sessions, who are some of the speakers you think that people should be on the lookout for that you think are particularly noteworthy?
Oh, wow. We've got so many speakers at this particular event, from Microsoft certified masters. We have regional directors. We have MVPs. So if you are really into patterns and practices, for example, people like Irvin Van Hunen and Vesa Yuvonen will be at the event. So, start thinking about things like patterns and practices, and that community like Paolo Piorsi that exists around that will all be presenting sessions at the event, both Microsoft as well as community-led. If you think about intranets and you think about knowledge management, you start thinking about these things, you can think about people like Susan Hanley that will be at the event. Joanna Klein leading a lot of messaging around security and compliance and some of the things that comprise content services from a community perspective. So we have so many people, Power Apps and Flow, if you're looking to learn more about that. Both Shane Young and Todd Clint will both be here talking about not only, implementing concepts such as Power Apps and Flow, but also from an administration perspective. So thinking through the governance lens, how to think about these different things. So there's just so many people, and it's so hard for me to mention, and I'm just kind of going off the top of my head, that are contributing to this event to make it successful from our community.
Well, let me cheat with a couple of ones that I took note on, just because I think it gives a good window into the breadth of what we're offering, and certainly a lot of the speakers. And I'm just going to read about 3 or 4. So amplify your digital creativity with modern SharePoint sites. That's with our friend Tracy Vanderschiff, who obviously gives lots of great sessions and has lots of great, go do her Q&A at the end because she has always amazing answers. A great title. I love this one from Julie Turner and Mark Rackley. Anything you can do, I can do better.
Oh, boy.
Which kind of gives me this image of somebody coding backwards in heels for some reason.
Look up a session that Mark did with Lori Gowan a few years ago. It will be informative. I guarantee with the two of them, it'll also be entertaining.
And then kind of on a spectrum we haven't talked about from a security perspective, defending the cloud, a look behind the scenes on how we secure Microsoft OneDrive and SharePoint from our friend Matt Swan, who we've had on the show and is always a great speaker to expose really what happens behind the scenes from a security perspective. And the last one that I put down here was just Business Intelligence Power Hour Community Edition from John White, Jason Himmelstein, Trebgat, and Adam Saxton, which of course is the Power Hour Power folks when I think of Power BI. So power to the BI people. And of course, that's just a handful. If you go look at our list of sessions, we'll definitely put a link in our show notes. There are so many great sessions, and they're nicely spread out across all the workloads, all the different levels, all the different audience targets. So there's obviously something for everybody.
One thing that we're also looking forward to doing with SPC is Mark and I will be doing some rendition of the Intrazone podcast live, recorded, at SPCs.
Yeah, think of it as there will be a session listed that you can go to that is the intro zone. It'll be very topic oriented. We'll try to make it really interesting with the guests that we have, but expect that you come and be a part of that session because we always have questions that we take from the audience and a lot of information that we share. There's one thing last that I want to share based on what the SharePoint Conference team has actually allowed us to offer and make sure that we highlight is for Interzone listeners, are you ready to save money on registration for SPC? Each SPC 19 speaker has a special registration code. I think it's usually their last name, all uppercase, but sometimes it's a little bit different, that will give you $50 off when you register if you use that code. We have actually a special document that we've gathered together that has all of these codes listed. And for you listeners, you can go and check out this document, see all the codes, and pick the speaker that you're most excited to see, and basically use that code when you register to save yourself money and also give them some kudos that lets them know that you are interested in what they're doing at SPC 19. So there'll be a ton of registration codes that you can choose from. Save $50 off at time of registration, and we'll see you there.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah. Usually the way it works, I say, hey, Bill, and you say, hey, Chris. I have an idea. You've been to a lot of conferences as a speaker, and I know from your office that you have lots of lanyards hanging in your office.
I cannot deny.
So if we add them all together, we're going to get to the total number of lanyard badges in your office plus mine. I'd like to challenge our audience to write to us with what you think that number is, and whoever comes closest could receive a prize. What do you think of that?
I think that's a fantastic idea, and I have a great prize in mind.
What's that prize?
I think for that individual who comes closest to the accurate count of badges combined that Chris and I both have, we will send them a drone and some additional swag.
I think that's great. I think we've got a second challenge. I'm just thinking here, and Bill, you can validate if we can actually do this. But the other part of the challenge is we're going to post images of your badges, my badges, Jeff's badges, who we talked with a little bit earlier, and we'll put all those out there. And our challenge to the audience is send us a picture of your conference badges in the most creative way you can imagine to showcase all the events that you've been to, even if it's just one event or however many Chris and Bill have combined. Whatever that number is, just do it in a creative way. Send it to us so that we can see the image. And I'm thinking we give the winner of that part of the challenge a free conference pass to SPC 19.
That sounds...
I think that's an excellent idea.
You think we can handle that?
I think we can.
All right, so Intrazone listeners, or if you want to share this news with people who haven't heard the podcast, make them listen to the podcast so they can hear it themselves. We put the challenge out to you. Send us a picture via Twitter, we'll tell you how, of your conference badge images. Be creative. The best one that we think out of all of them gets a free pass to SPC 19.
So, we've been talking to Bill Baer, Senior Product Manager for SharePoint and OneDrive here in the Infrazone. Bill, thanks for sitting down with us.
Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy Vegas schedule. Have fun making more plans about SPC. Thanks for coming on the Infrazone.
Thank you, Mark. It's always fun to be here, especially when I'm in Vegas and you're in Redmond.
Yeah. We've reached that time where we get to tap even more information out of our subject matter experts. Jeff, we want to hear from you. What is your most frequently asked question these days?
The most frequently asked question I would say is, how do I get connected to what people are doing in community? Where do you people kind of sit, and where is everyone doing their business? And that is a question. It's always like, hey, what's the URL I go to, or where is it that we have all of this stuff from content to people? And it's techcommunity.microsoft.com. And I probably reply that a million times a day, where all of the content lands for the tour, all of it lands for Ignite. SharePoint has their blogs and all of their information, and that's probably...
And when you say all the information, there's pre-information before you go to the event, but you're also talking about the actual events themselves, the decks, the videos, information about the speakers, who the speakers are, engagement on questions after the event.
Yes.
Everything.
It is everything, and it's a trove of information. So that's always my answer is go Tech Community, and you should be able to find what you need.
Very nice. Good FAQ.
So, Bill, what's a question you've been hearing about lately that isn't SPC related, but is in your coverage areas?
I think one of the things that I've been hearing about lately is recently I picked up Microsoft Search as one of my charters, and there's been a lot of questions about the relationship of Bing for business and Microsoft Search. And I think the answer to that is, from an end user perspective, there is multiple endpoints to one central thing, which is Microsoft Search, and it's available in Bing, Outlook, SharePoint, and more. So we need to think of Microsoft Search as being a cohesive search scenario that exists across Microsoft 365 and not distinct entry points that bring you to differentiated experiences.
Very nice. I think it's very, very important to think in terms of not where do I go to search, but what can I search, how can I search, and I literally know now I can search from anywhere when I need to search for something. Chris, what is your FAQ?
Will my next event have hands-on labs there? And the answer I give is it's a different world than it was 10 or 15 years ago. So 10 or 15 years ago, the only way we could give people early access to technology was usually by bundling up a whole bunch of PCs and a whole bunch of servers and shipping an entire mini data center to an event like a Tech Ed. And you still see some of the larger conferences are able to stand up a hands-on lab. But in most cases, it's easier for us to do that than ever before because there are ways that you can get that experience delivered directly from the cloud. Some of those demos are things that we host and we publish through our partners on a platform we call Mod, which is demos.microsoft.com. More and more, though, we're taking those and we're packaging them up through the Microsoft Tech Community Resource Center. So if there's something that you're looking to experience for new technology, we're trying to do a better job of getting it there much more quickly after we announce it to the Resource Center. So my guidance is, even if you don't have a hands-on lab at the event that you're hoping there will be one, please check the Resource Center. And if we don't have something published there, please let us know and we'll try to get it there. So Mark, what questions have you been hearing lately?
So this one is actually spurred from 2 years ago when people asked what it is that we're going to share at the new SharePoint conference. And certainly then we came out and part of the question I got coming out of that was, gosh, I didn't see a lot of developer content in the keynote. And then you skip to last year, SPC 18, and we had a little bit more developer content in the keynote when Vesa took the stage, and we had about 15 minutes of him talking about what they were working on, and certainly a lot of great demos. But still, there was the common question, if I go to the SharePoint conference and I'm a developer, is that a conference for me, or should I only go to build?
Right.
That's the question. So a lot of what we tell people is, certainly we've taken that feedback. That's why you heard Vesa speak on and share demos in the keynote itself. But we also included a pre-day workshop. We went and at the end of the week, we had more deeper level 3 and 400 level developer sessions. And we'll do that again. We're taking that same feedback. We want to make sure that we land all of the new innovation from a developer's perspective, but then carry it through the week. So as we're in planning now for SPC 19, to be mindful of, yes, there is build, but build doesn't just focus on Office or SharePoint type developer information. So we want to make sure that we cover it. So we have a great developer experience at SPC 19, great leads in that space, so there will be great content. And again, pre-day information in the keynote, and then sessions that go deep throughout the week, especially towards the end, if you're really looking for that deep level developer content.
And so now an intrazone curveball. If you were only going to one event, which event would you go to?
I'd have to balance that out. Or what are my main goals? If I am the Uber admin that's just been handed the keys for Microsoft 365 and how do I deploy machines and manage security and think in terms of all the workloads all up, I might start with Ignite because that's where I can plug in with all those speakers. But if I'm on the journey and I've already got everybody rolled out with their machines, I've got security intact, and I'll just take advantage of the next level of innovation, and I'm starting to think of what do I do around my modern intranet or collaboration or how to manage and build out my own business solutions, obviously everything that's in our wheelhouse, where you can double down and get all that information, of course, is the SharePoint conference. It'd be wonderful to go to both, and sequentially, you may want to go to one before the other. And know that, of course, there's all times throughout the year where you can plug in at the different levels. So attend one of a broader event and then think in terms of something that's more of a regional event where you can actually go and approach and ask those specific questions. But if you need to go broad, Ignite. If you need to narrow in on SharePoint and all of our technologies, SharePoint Conference.
For personal reasons, I like going to SharePoint Conference, but my answer, if I were still on the attendee side of this, I would look for one of the regional 500 to 1,000 person conferences because it's a good blend between if they have the right mix of speakers, and usually all these events do, in fact, It gives you much more opportunity for a personal dialogue with the speakers and the keynotes in a way that, frankly, when Microsoft is delivering a keynote to 10,000 people or 30,000 people, there usually isn't a chance to say, hey, Satya, I have a question. So I think the smaller events actually are even more effective at forging that sense of community, which is the essential fabric we weave into an event like Ignite or SPC.
Sure. And, when somebody might ask, why do they keep mentioning all the SharePoint Saturdays? Oh, they do it because it's the SharePoint product that these people are talking about. And the reality is, no, they're great events. They are ones that are achievable and attainable because of cost and hopefully location if you find one near you. But in reality, they're wonderful events. They've got great speakers, great content. They build off of our messaging and vice versa. We learn from them and even build out some of our best practices and guidance based on those MVP speakers. So don't ever let a smaller event sell itself short based on it's not a big Microsoft event.
Well, that's a fantastic round of answers to our questions. Appreciate everyone sticking around to help add insight to our listeners. We hope you can join us again next time in the Intro Zone for more FAQs. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's step across the event horizon and look forward to events coming up throughout 2019. Rule of engagement, we are not going to read dates and URLs to you. We'll have all those things in the show notes, but we want to make sure it's still early in 2019. And as you are planning out your conference and event year and working on your calendar and working on your budget, these are some things that we've gone to that we think may make sense for you to keep in mind.
So step up first to SharePoint Saturdays. We always talk about SharePoint Saturdays, so very similar to how we've done before. These are great opportunities from a regional perspective to think in terms of use and adoption. How can I learn more? And engage locally with people who are also thinking about those same problems and solutions. Nice thing about SharePoint Saturdays is they are free. And as of this episode coming up next, February 9th, 2 cities, one in Chennai in India and the other Salt Lake City, Utah. And February 16th, really interesting place, Cairo, Egypt. So make sure to visit the SharePoint Saturdays website to find an event coming near you. And remember, free, great place to plug in.
So another community event, it's paid, but it's a smaller event, the North American Collab Summit. It's coming up in March 2019 in a town that does not get as many technology events, Branson, Missouri. It's a great community event. Mark Rackley is the organizer for it. This has been a growing event for years. If you need to find dozens of speakers and hundreds of attendees to learn from each other in a really fun city to hang out in, this is for you.
And I'm going to give just 2 plugs. One is I actually was asked to do one of the keynotes and said yes, and very excited about that. So if you want to see me in maybe unusual attire, I'll just say that for now. Attend and check out what I'm wearing. I've got some fun things planned. And if you use the discount code Microsoft, all uppercase, you'll get $50 off. Our next set are really 2. If you go to the SP TechCon, there's going to be one in Austin in February and one in Boston in August. And I know you're pretty involved in a lot of the SP TechCons.
Yeah, SP TechCon has always been, I like to think of it as a mid-range event. You have community events, which are typically drawing people from a city. And when you look at SP TechCon or some of the other regional events, you're usually pulling people in from a third to a half the country. And there's a small international contingent. They're great because they're sufficiently large that you can probably get your questions answered, and they're sufficiently small that you can probably get your questions answered. So also coming up later this spring, Microsoft Build. This is a developer-focused conference. It's held in the Cloud City, otherwise known as Seattle, coming up in the spring. It is developer-focused. It is attendee-constrained. There is a tight quota on the number of tickets. It sells out fast because we want to encourage the kind of student-teacher ratio, if you will, to make sure that there's lots of chances for you to be able to talk to the speakers and vice versa.
So the Build team has not yet announced their dates, but when they do, we'll make sure to include that because it's a really important event for developers. So next event is one that we've talked about before on the show, the AIM conference in San Diego at the end of March. And again, if you use the code Microsoft, you'll get $100 off if you want to attend the AIM conference. I always pitch this one to you because you've got a little extra to add because this is in your wheelhouse.
We're bringing 15 people from Microsoft. Please come so we're not lonely.
And you're bringing the right 15 people, talking about deep content services and all the fun stuff that we offer, and of course how we plug into the breadth of when people think about managing their content.
So a little bit later in the spring, SharePoint Fest, another one of these regional events, will be coming to Washington, D.C. I love SharePoint Fest, and it tends to adapt a little bit to the city that it's in. SharePoint Fest D.C. has slightly more government-based sessions and contracts and attendees, which makes sense given where they are. I was just on a planning call. There'll also be a lot of Teams content. The Teams team will be delivering the keynote there. So we're really looking forward to hearing more about how you can use SharePoint as the engine to power Microsoft Teams.
So as SP Fest Washington, D.C. gets us over into the May part of the year, also in May, towards the end of May, is the European Collaboration Summit 2019. And this year it'll be in Wiesbaden, Germany. And you can go to the website that we have linked in our show notes. This is a premium European workplace conference, and they cover everything from Microsoft 365, Azure, SharePoint, multi-cloud, business apps, all that good stuff.
And a little later in the spring, Microsoft's second Business Application Summit, June 10th to 11th. So this is fairly large. There'll be thousands of people at it. It is focused not on the breadth of everything that we do in Microsoft, but looking at everything that we do within business applications. So Dynamics and Power Apps and Flow and lists and forums and all of those capabilities. 2 days.
Only 2 people are going to be?
2 people.
That's wonderful.
It's an amazing conference with 200 sessions. 2 keynotes from Microsoft, from James Phillips and Alyssa Taylor. Hundreds of experts, thousands of people. And that is Atlanta in the middle of June.
So let's get a quick view then. If you really look down towards the end of the year, we've got a couple of conferences we wanted to make sure made this list so that we are exhaustive on the events episode. But we have the SharePoint Fest Seattle, which I just submitted my session, and I hope that I'll get accepted. That's in August.
Yeah, and that's another SharePoint Fest event. I mentioned they're all different because that one is so close to the Redmond mothership. We're going to be bringing a much larger contingent from the product team over than usual. That'll be a reasonably large event, so we look forward to being able to see people there. And for folks on the other side of the Pacific, also in August, in Sydney, in Australia, the conference, which formerly was SharePoint Conference Australia and now is broadened to being all things digital workplace, that'll be going on in early August 2019. Hope you are able to make that one.
Nice. And then the last one that we wanted to mention was the European SharePoint Conference. That will be in Prague this year. And very much looking forward to not only how that echoes what we announce and share at the SharePoint conference, but it's got a lot of nice room in between, so there will be a lot of technology that actually has landed. So by the time we get to the European SharePoint conference, we can show a lot of the progress which we noted as innovation to come. So that'll be really exciting. So that is a ton of events, both first party and third party. They're happening across the year, across the world, with lots of different levels of what they focus on and who they target. So, of course, we went through them all, but we absolutely make sure to have them all listed with dates, any specific discount codes, and, of course, the link to go register. And
if there's an event that you know about that would be great to share with the audience, even though it seems that the calendar is already full, there's already room for more. There's always time. We know that a couple years ago, there were 6 SharePoint Saturdays in the same day. It's a big world. There's lots of room for more learning. Please let us know. We'd love to share that.
Yeah, especially if you've got a large user group meeting coming up. We've seen a lot of user groups that are in the hundreds of people, if not close to 1,000 people. So those count as well. We want to make sure that you can get the content that you're looking for, talk to the people that you're looking to ask questions of, and certainly have a wonderful time not getting blocked by any confusion, but completely unblocked to do what it is you need to do with your technology.
And that's the Event Horizon. Thank you.
Thanks to our guests, Jeff Medford and Bill Baer.
You can check out our show page for links to everything discussed today and more. Go to aka.ms/theinterzone. You'll also find details about our 2 Interzone Conference badge challenges. Remember, the prizes will include a drone and a free pass to SPC 2019.
We love hearing from listeners. Do send us questions and feedback for the SharePoint teams. You can reach us via email at theinterzone@microsoft.com or via Twitter @SharePoint, @mcashman, and @cmcnulty2000.
Thank you. And remember to rate, review, and tell all your friends about the show. You could even put it on Yelp if you wanted. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you so much for listening. We're your hosts, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty. This has been The Interzone, a show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet.